it going, guys? I'm Nick, and today we're going to be installing Integrated Engineering's Downpipe. So let's get after it. Alright, so to start off, we're going to be removing the downpipe clamp. We're going to need a 6mm Allen to take that bolt out, and then we are going to see if we can pry that clamp apart. It's kind of stuck together through tension and probably a little bit of gunk that's built up. So once you get that bolt out, you're just going to take something like a flathead or a pry tool, whatever you got. This clamp is going to be attached to the other side. Just lightly press in on that, pry it apart, and it should be free. With this backside clamp, it's not on there super strong. My buddy actually came over and did it himself and just pulled it straight back. Say hi. All right, so now that we got this completely loose, just pull it apart a tad and separate it from your turbo system. I'm gonna pivot it all the way back around and pull it off just so we don't have to worry about it. There we go. So now we got that clasp off. We're gonna remove our O2 sensor cable. Don't actually have to disconnect it from the downpipe yet. But remove it from this little clasp back here. If your engine's hot, just be careful you don't burn yourself. Pull it out. Pulling it out, and then to disconnect it, pull it straight out. Right here, press down on that tab while also pulling it out. There you go. Now we got the O2 sensor taken care of for us. Buddy's going to lift up the car, and we'll get to work on the underside. Now we're going to take this bracket off. I got my man Mikey here helping me out.
So we got this bracket. You got 4 bolts here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 13mm socket. Should be a nice, quick, easy job. Take them out here.
I should have mentioned before, but my car is not stock. As you can see, I'm running an AWE Touring Edition exhaust system, and the downpipe is currently aftermarket as well. Running Unitronic, and I'm thankful to have the support of Integrated Engineering to send me their new downpipe to replace this one. My process for taking off, an already aftermarket downpipe might be a little bit different than yours. The only thing that I can really think of that would be too different would be, see that some of the brackets that are up there holding the downpipe in, and then maybe the positioning of the downstream O2 sensors. So just keep an eye out for that. They're not that big of a pain. Yep, stupid me forgot the new downpipe in the trunk of my car, which is obviously all the way up there. We're gonna bring it back down real quick. So now we're gonna remove these 2 bolts holding in the bracket. We need a 13mm socket and go to work. That one, this one. Multitasking here. Just 1 and 2. Somewhat loose. Still hung in by these rubber grommets here. So I think we'll lower the car down just a tad and see what we can do about getting the rest of the system out. So we got this 1 bracket loose. Now we're gonna work towards the backside, underside of the engine bay. There's 2 bolts that we're gonna need to get loose. The first one we're gonna tackle is way up there. So just snake your hand along the left side of the downpipe. That I think, what do we say we're using, Mikey?
D13 socket, I believe. Yeah.
Okay, and just hold the whole thing up for us. Focus. Jesus, hold on. That's the extension that we're gonna need to get that bolt off. after we get this one off, I'll show you guys where the last bolt is that we need to remove. It's in quite a precarious spot, deep under there. It might be a little bit challenging to see, but we're gonna do our best. Crack. All right, so that bolt that we just thought we got out, it's actually just a nut. Just, you know, quick note. Okay, so there's the second nut that we need to get off. Holding the last bit of the bracket in for our downpipe. So I'm kind of going straight up through here. That's probably the easiest spot that I could find to get access to that bolt, but you know, still while being kind of straight on to that nut. So let's see what we could do. Now we're snug fit on that bolt, or nut rather. We're gonna try and get it out. Camera might come in and out of focus, so just bear with us. Now we got it cracked. Should be able to unscrew it with just our fingers, so it doesn't drop out. All right, now that we got all this stuff loose, we can move towards these clamps. All right, so for both of these, I believe, deep socket, we're using 7/16, and you should be able to get that cracked loose.
All right, so this bracket here, once you get the bolt off, you got this, goes into this part here. We just applied a little bit of force to both ends of the bracket, and it popped right off. And then might need a pry bar for this last part, it seems like, but the two end
right
flaps came off pretty easily.
There you go. Now for the last one. Crack it loose. Again, we're gonna need a deep socket for this one. Wrap this up and move on to the next part. So we removed that one main clamp right here, as well as the other one on the back side. Now, downpipe should, for the most part, be loose. We're gonna try and snake it out. As soon as you get it off of those two captive bolts, past that point, you should be able to pull the rest out. While you're pulling it out, you're going to want to turn the downpipe. Let's see, it was mounted like that, just above. So it's going to break loose through from those bolts, and then you're going to slowly start to tilt it around this way, and you should be good. Just be careful. Still got the O2 sensor on there. Thankfully, we unclipped it from the top, and you're good to go. Now we're going to start the transition. We got a couple things that we have to move over from our old downpipe to our new downpipe. So we're going to start with this downstream O2 sensor first. You're going to need a O2 sensor socket. The sole purpose is to take off O2 sensors because you're not going to be able to get a traditional socket on there. So what we're going to want to do, use that opening, align it with our O2 sensor wire. Go, that, snake it on. Should get us to lock into place. Really couldn't get enough juice on it to get this thing broken out. So we're going to use a breaker bar, throw it on top of the ratchet, and make sure we're aligned. And I'll try and hold it. There you go. Screw it. we're good. So O2 sensors removed, and we're gonna get these rubber grommets undone. Mikey's gonna go ahead and spray them with some WD-40. Just make our jobs a little bit easier on us. Might need a pry tool, flathead, whatever, to really pop it out. You get more leverage right here. One, nice job. You can see there's some nipples here that you're gonna have to contend with. So that's what's giving us our hang up. There you go, two. Yeah. All right, so now throwing the new downpipe in. We're gonna wait to put the O2 sensor back on till we get everything secure and in position, and really don't want to put too much strain on that O2 sensor cable while we're trying to wiggle everything into place. But this is the kind of orientation we're going to start with for putting things in, and try and twist it around as we go. Kind of tricky to figure out how to orient while also trying to get a good filming angle here, but yeah, just take your time, keep wiggling it. I think we're good. Try and line up those tabs. The bracket on the back side of the downpipe. If you remember earlier, we took off 2 nuts that were secured onto 2 captive bolts. So try and align that back up as best we can. All right, managed to get the downpipe for the most part in place. It is, you guys can see that, secure onto the back side of those brackets. And I did actually go ahead and use my buddy Mikey on the top side for support, pulling the downpipe up while I kind of get it locked into place on that bracket. Now we're going to go ahead and put those bolts back on to the back side of the downpipe bracket. We're able to get them back on, those nuts, and for the most part just thread them in by hand for now. Now we're ready to put this bracket back in. Remember, we reattached it to Integrated Engineering's new bracket arm. So we're gonna make sure that the divots here are facing downward and not upward. That'll give us the fit that we need. Position that up a little bit. Get your bolts, line it up as much as you can. I'm not sure what the torque spec is for these, but it's gonna have to be super, super tight. I guess I'd say maybe somewhere between 30, 40 foot-pounds. The old click, click, click. Again, you're going into plastic, so just be careful. Use your own judgment. Now we're just gonna throw our included hardware in through this bracket. Should be in the packaging that you got through Integrated Engineering with the rest of your downpipe stuff. Just get it threaded on there. It doesn't have to be super snug. That's why they gave us some play in this little slot here, so we can wiggle it back and forth. To get the midpipe, the new midpipe in, we're gonna need to remove a little bit more. So for me, again, still I'm working with my current aftermarket setup. These clamps might be the same for you. We're going to use a deep socket, 13 millimeter. So now we got our mid-pipe assembly. We're going to want to make sure that we have our clamps on in the order that I'm kind of showing here. So you'll have your 3-inch clamp coming over this reducer or coupler, whatever you want to call it. That'll allow us to plug right into here. And at the end of that, make sure you got this clamp on there as well. When you actually go ahead and put these things on, make sure you're cognizant of the orientation of these bolts, and just in case you have to shift things around with your exhaust system, get your fitment just right, or hopefully you don't have to take it off, but if you do have to, these bolts, you want to have them in the right spot. So once you got everything set up and together, what I'm going to do is actually work from the exhaust side first and then move my way over to the downpipe. We'll eventually have to contend with the V-band clamp, which will hold these two bits from the downpipe to the mid-pipe together. So we got our clamp on our reducer. Angle the bolts down so you can thread the nuts back in. Throw it onto exhaust. Get it snug up there as much as you can. Put these nuts back on. We got our new mid pipe here. We got our 3-inch clamp on there as well. Again, same thing as this reducer. Make sure the actual bolt is facing down so you have access to it if you need to service the vehicle. Slide the mid pipe in. Get it in place. And we need about probably an inch of clearance before we can get that on there. Mikey's testing the fitment with the mid pipe and the down pipe.
All good to you?
Yeah, I think so. So now we just need to get the V-band clamp on. One thing to quickly note is that you may have to head down to the back side of the car. The exhaust, pull back on, if you got a muffler there, pull back on that a little bit to give you the clearance you need to get the mid pipe flush with the bottom side of the down pipe. Mikey's working on getting the V-band clamp on there. You have to take the nut out, push the captive bolt back through the clamp, and tighten it up a little bit. Yeah, well, let's make sure the rest of our stuff is aligned. We got everything kind of positioned how we want it here. We're going to come into this clamp on the top side of the reducer here with a 15 millimeter socket. Get this tightened down. And at a certain point, which I think I'm going to need, is a deep 15 socket. Spiky. Helps to have a buddy while you're doing this.
2 sets of hands, very nice.
Yeah. I think there's a crush washer in between it, so as soon as that crush washer stops turning, probably good. Now we're gonna secure this V-band up here with your 1/2-inch socket. Kind of finding its own place within the housing of this V-band. And guess what we're gonna need? Another deep socket. 1/2-inch, I'll grab it. Once you go back through all these clamps, you really want to make sure they're secure. You don't want exhaust leaks. It's not good for anyone or your car. Again, not really sure what torque specs are, but I'm gonna guess. Click. We're back up on the top side of the car. While everything is still somewhat loose, the back side of the bottom bracket where your polyurethane or rubber bushings are, as well as the midsection of the downpipe, you've got those 2 bolts. We still have to screw back in as well. Now we're going to put this V-band back on to the top side of the new downpipe and the turbo. Take the bolt out. You should have a captive nut in the back there. Open it up, wiggle it around, and eventually we're going to throw that screw back in, or bolt rather. Again, make sure it's positioned to a place where, you know, it's going to be serviceable. So go ahead and tighten that down. Okay, what do we have here, Mikey? 6mm?
I think. I don't know if it's marked.
6mm. Allen. And again, I'm not really sure what torque spec is on this V-band clamp, so I'm just going to give it our best go. One more for good luck. But I guess when you start hearing that noise, probably a good time to back off, right? All right, now we're just putting this bracket back in. We got 4 bolts. I'm going to lift up on the exhaust and the mid-pipe while Mikey screws everything in. And now that we've got our downpipe in, pretty much everything tightened up and ready to go, we're going to do the last bit. Go and grab our O2 sensor and cable, drop that back into place, get that all loomed through the wiring harness, or at least the clips for them in the engine bay, and should be good to go. We'll just start her up. And let that soak a little bit. Allen key. Fuck. Well, luckily it's right there. Are you kidding me?